Dressed, Stevie opened the door to his room with a certainty of purpose that surprised him. He didn't bother to be cautious. What for? No one could stop him. He stepped into the hallway and turned towards the stairs. He deliberately looked into the spare room, breathing deeply with excitement. He would see her soon. He turned to the stairs, and it was in that motion of turning from the room that his eyes fell upon a peculiar shape resting on the vanity. He changed direction and walked over to the little table. A single branch of white lavender lay across the tabletop. Stevie picked it up and smiled. He knew she was waiting for him. He touched the sprig to his nose, nestling the cluster of buds. The scent was soft and far away. It was a scent of spring, of huge green fields spread out in the sun. It was the clean scent of promises, and in spite of the white buds, he thought of softest purple. Happily, Stevie clenched the branch in his hands and thought of her. "Thank you, Grandma. I love you so much." But when he looked again at the branch, it clung grubbily to his jacket. The bouquet of white suddenly a slimy brown. Revolted, Stevie threw the branch onto the bed. It clumped upon the bedspread, shriveled and disappeared. Angrily, Stevie left the room. He stood at the top of the stairs, fists at his sides, staring down into the dark. He didn't understand the meaning of what he'd seen, and his frustration angered him all the more. He was tired of signs and voices and tricks. He was tired of yearning to learn more. He was tired of being denied his rightful... "Where are you going?" Stevie started and almost threw himself down off the landing. The idiot. His brother stood by the balustrade looking quizzically at Stevie. "Where are you going, Stevie?" Stevie took one step towards Bobby and hissed, "Go back to bed." The boy looked at Stevie without comprehension. "I said, go back to bed, you little snitch." Bobby stumbled backwards, suddenly certain that he did not know this stranger who stood menacingly on the stairs. "Where's Stevie? I want Stevie!" In the blink of an eye, Stevie crossed to Bobby and spoke directly into the silence of his brother. "If you even try to scream, Bobby, I'll send you someplace you'll never get back from. Understand?" Bobby was paralysed with fear. He looked into the darkness of the monster's eyes. He felt the hand at his collar. He knew that his brother was gone. "I won't tell. I promise, mister. I won't tell anyone." Stevie smiled wickedly. "I know you won't tell. You're going back to bed now." And he released Bobby's collar. The child remained suspended in the air, terrified. "Night, Bobby." And Stevie waved one exaggerated goodbye. Bobby's little body twirled in space, once, twice, and ended up facing the bedroom into which he was unceremoniously thrown, landing hard upon his bed. Chuckling to himself, Stevie descended the stairs. Behind him, Bobby's bedroom door closed and locked itself. The night had winter in mind and kept its size cold. There was only darkness. Stevie walked through the backyard, cutting diagonally across the black grass. He knew the terrain with his whole body, knew when the ground would dip and rush down towards the gully. He climbed the fence at the end of their property and slipped down into the trench. Water dribbled through the half conduit, heading farther down the incline to slosh off across the road. He scrambled up onto the slight ridge and looked back. His house was already in the burrow of boughs that had closed behind him. He would not be able to see anything before the top of the quarry. Stevie turned back to his climb. The ground was solid beneath his step, frozen in anticipation of snow. Stevie stayed to the centre of the dirt path, occasionally batting at a low branch that wanted to tangle with his hair. He was breathing heavily, and not from the exercise. There had been no reason to threaten Bobby. Not really. And what was worse, while he held the boy by the throat, Stevie had enjoyed the threat. Had enjoyed the sight of his brother powerless, dangling from his mercy. The image burned in his mind. Nothing distracted him from seeing the absolute fear in Bobby's eyes, hearing the pitiable pleading of his frightened brother. Stevie stopped dead in the path. What was happening to him? Life, poor dear. You have stepped on your path. There is no turning back. You can't hope to make everybody happy. Bobby had no business being up at this hour. No, that was true. Bobby should have been in bed, asleep. It was his own fault if he was hurt. He's a crybaby anyway. Poor little one. Yes, Bobby was a crybaby. A stupid little brat of a child who always got in the way, who always wanted to do what Stevie was doing, go where Stevie went. Yes, it served him right. That's my proud dear. Remember that it was only you that I showed this power. Only to you. So be strong, little one. You're about to begin a journey that will be the greatest strength to you. Remember everything I've taught you. Remember that it's you and I, dear one. You and I. Stevie now stood in a brace of birch at the foot of an incline. Above him began the lines of pines that circled the quarry. Even in the dark, the paleness of the tree trunks was incandescent. He could make out the winding way he had made through their midst. It was the first time he could see the sky since he'd started his hike. Stevie looked up into the maze of yearning empty branches. The blue-black was almost void of stars, just a shy sprinkling scattered across the heavens. It was a beautiful sight, somehow even humbling. Hurry now, my dear. Come away from there. He looked up towards the way of her thoughts, up towards the top of the ridge, just before the drop into the quarry. Yes, he should hurry. Stevie turned to climb the rocky path to her. He'd taken one step up when something made him turn back around. Nothing there. But something had tripped his attention. Despite her calls to him, "Come away from there, little one. Come up to me now. I'm waiting." Stevie could not seem to move in any direction. He surveyed the copse of birch, studied the frozen ground that had been laid by an army of fallen leaves, and suddenly noticed what struggled to be seen. It was a ribbon. A length of fabric that reached out insistently. He wondered how he could have missed it before. A thin thing wound round the luminous body of a birch several times, fluttering in such a way that it appeared to be waving at him with two arms. As Stevie stared at it, its movement became more animated. It bucked and billowed towards him, snapped one end and then the other in seeming frustration. Suddenly, whipping about ever more wildly, the fabric managed to unwrap itself from the impediment. It sidled through the air on an unseen wind, a flimsy serpent yearning to catch the right breeze. It made a soft rushing as it flew towards Stevie, frightening him into raising his hand before it could wrap itself around his throat. With cunning instinct, The fabric curled around his fingers, flung itself around his wrists. He was fastened by it, and worse, it had weight, seemingly, the weight of a carload of chains. It dragged at his arms, bringing him to trip to his knees. "Grandmother, help!" Stevie yelled up towards the quarry, desperate to be rid of the strangling fabric. "Grandmother!" He reached out his thoughts to her, searched for her. Nothing! He almost screamed as his anxiety bloomed to terror. He looked at his binding, snagging, more determined to hold him fast. With a last hope's single-minded focus, Stevie bridled his fear and searched his heart for an answer. He watched the length of cloth continue to wriggle and snake its arms round and round his wrists. It was a force that had intentions of keeping him from leaving, keeping him from going to the quarry, keeping him from discovery. It was then the thought came to him. Stevie had learned all his lessons well and prayed that this one would not elude him. Closing his eyes, he held his breath and thought of fire. He found himself thinking of the candle, thought of its light, of its strength in the face of the storm. He thought of it there on the ground before him. He saw its flame, saw its bulk, felt the sharp heat of it near his hands. In one sudden gulp, he sucked in the flame, tucked it into the hollow of his cheeks and swelled his breath with fire. Opening his eyes, he bellowed upon the ribbon that chained him. "Go away!" incinerating the bulk of it at a word. Stevie fell backwards as the ribbon released him, watched as the fire ate the last bit of lavender remnant. Stevie stood on the lip of the quarry, gazing across the expanse of the rugged depression. There was a numbness that refused to witness his apprehensions. There was nothing in the night that caused his unease. No, it was not the night. It was in him. Stevie could feel it. A fist of a stone deep in his belly. He looked about him. No wind, no hostile heaven split to drown him in a tempest. The dull reflection of a few stars upon the dim skirt of the lake deep below him. There was nothing here about him but the silence of the midnight woods. Nothing. No power, no threat, no angry woodland spirit waiting to gnash him into shreds of a boy. Stevie knew that he was alone. He kicked a pebble into the crater. He waited for the splash of it hitting the water. He heard nothing. He sat at the edge of the pit, scraping his heel against the pebbly surface. He did not feel the cold, either in the air or on the ground. All he could feel was a weighted presence in his heart. He looked out onto a variety of shadows. "Grandma, where are you?" His voice softly spun round the rim of the quarry and returned to ask itself, "Where are you?" "Here, little one, waiting." He heard the quiet sigh of her, but could not find any happiness at the sound. He remained where he sat, not certain anymore exactly what he was doing there. "Oh, nonsense, my dear. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. We have work to do." Her exuberance buffeted him, pressing for him to stand. "Grandmother, I don't understand anymore. What am I doing here? Why couldn't I keep the flowers? And why did the ribbon try to stop me?" He waited, listening to his question fold into the shadows of the quarry. She did not reply. "Was it you, Grandmother? Were you testing me again?" Still, she did not reply. "Why won't you answer me?" He jumped to his feet. Nothing. Cautiously, Stevie inched away from the edge. You're not her, are you? He stepped farther back. You're not my grandmother, are you? A shuddering owl startled him as it ruffled itself upon a branch behind him. Does it matter, little one? Did it matter that I kept you company these many weeks? Does it matter if I don't wish you any harm? Who are you? You fright only yourself, my dear. Ask fewer questions. Who are you? Stevie stood with his back to the woods, the little footpath directly at his heels. I'm the lonely one, my dear, the sad and abandoned one. You know me well, don't you? For some reason, Stevie stopped feeling the urge to flee. He couldn't explain it, but listening to that voice, so much like his grandmother's, he could only accept the truth of its words. What is it you want? What is it you want? What is it you've always wanted since you first felt it? The knot chugged another inch towards his gut. He placed a hand to his chest, rubbing the tight spot. I don't know. I do. I know. You've told me often enough. And I've always listened to you, my dear. I've always listened to you so well. See, I've done the hard work. I've brought you where you wanted to come, didn't I? Stevie didn't answer. He couldn't. The little knot turned and dropped into his stomach. A warm breath caressed his neck and made the hairs twitch. It saved you a little while ago. Remember, little one? It came when you called and helped you out of that fix. Stevie's breath was coming in uncomfortable spurts. His stomach was really beginning to hurt. His body wanted to go home. It's not such a big secret, you know. It's just a little candle. What could be so wrong with having it in your hands? That is what you wanted, isn't it? To hold the light and look in the eyes of the person that lit it. I know you. Remember, you've told me so many times, and now here you are within sight of your desire. No, I don't want it anymore. I don't want to know who it is. His stomach rumbled over the knot, turning it and roughing it against him. Stevie almost doubled over with the pain. You can make that stop too. It's just you, you know. It's the excitement. Once you have the light in your hands, your stomach will stop flubbering around. Trust me, little one. I promise. You're so excited. That's all. Stevie wasn't sure. The pain was too real to be excitement, too sharp to be caused by anything like desire, but... Yes, little one. If he could make this knot go away. One thought through the candle and you'll be as good as new, all fresh and ready for adventure. Maybe... Trust me, my dear. Look across the lake. See, it's waiting for you, waiting to give you so many wonderful answers. Imperceptibly, a low glower turned upon the edge of the lake across from where Stevie stood. It was a pale flicker at first, but as the boy watched, the glimmer sparked to a single flame. It did nothing to dispel the dark in the body of the quarry. It looked like a pinprick of golden yellow in a quilt of dark velvet. See? Stevie stepped closer to the lip of the quarry, straining his vision to see clearly. The light flickered, spluttered, waved to him across the darkness. Stevie's eyes grew full of it and widened to drink in the light. Slowly, he stopped rubbing his stomach. He stopped wondering what he should do. He stopped wishing to be home. Fly to it, my dear. Don't waste time with a steep climb. You might hurt yourself for no reason. Fly to it. Stevie leaned over the rim of the quarry, tripped softly into the cauldron and slid down upon a cold air. He kept his mind to the candle and his body followed. Stevie skimmed inches above the liquid black of the lake, its body breathing a chill that reached up to numb him. His focus so complete on the flickering light, it was by sheer good fortune that Stevie did not slam into the black rock of the quarry. Startled, as the flank of the rock suddenly gained presence out of the black, Stevie's concentration faltered, and he dropped to the ground on the edge of the black lake. The first thing he noticed was the cold. It was an ice pick that plunged into his clothes, piercing into his warmth. His hands began to tremble. His shoulders ached from the fall. Stevie realised he was alone in the moor of the quarry. There was no shack, no candle. Where am I? His voice swelled within the cavity and pressed back against his ears. Where am I? Stevie was positive that he had not made a mistake. The light had been coming from where he stood. He had come directly at it. Where are you? The demand could not escape from the quarry and merely teased him as it passed again and again. Where are you? Where are you? It was horrible. Why had he come? What had possessed him? You don't trust me. Stevie pressed himself back towards the solid wall of the rock. He was frightened to hear that voice, and even more scared of being left alone in the dark. Why am I here? You wished it. I saw a candle. Where is it? In front of you. You're lying. There's nothing here. You tricked me. I did not. Trust your eyes, my dear. Look. It was fear that moved him. Fear that the voice would go away before he could figure out how to get home. Stevie forced himself to look in front of him. Nothing. He moved closer to the silent lake and looked deeper. There in front of him, the liquid glimmer of a candle. It shone up through the dark water. It was in the lake. I don't understand. The candle in the quarry. Stevie, you wish to find it. It's in front of you. Aren't you interested anymore? He stood on the edge of the water. The candle, the shack. They were reflected in the water of the lake. They were there, just as he'd seen them. But how do I get to it? Step in, my dear. Stevie stepped back instead. No, I'll freeze. I'll drown in there. You're trying to trick me again. You won't drown. Don't be a crybaby. Take a chance, Stevie. Be a man. I'll be dead. You'll be nice and warm inside the shack. See, the fire's waiting. And in the reflection, the front door opened and the warm glow of a cheery fire called him. It's a trick. No, Stevie, it's warm. The outline of the shack rippled with the slight breathing of the water. Stevie looked down at it. Maybe he should. Of course you should. You'll catch your death standing out here. Come on, Stevie. Follow me. And the voice disappeared into the water. He was truly alone, and there was no choice. Stevie took a step towards the edge of the lake and then lunged at the reflection of the shack. He pierced the frigid still water and tumbled through the open front door unharmed. Stevie wanted to whoop with joy. He had done it. He was inside the little shack, and the fire was real, and the warmth was real, and the big overstuffed chair with a blanket laid out for him. It was real. I did it! I did it! Yes, little one, you did. You should trust yourself more often. Joyfully, Stevie looked around the little room. Where are you? Can I see you now? In a moment. Why don't you warm yourself first? Stand by the fire. The big chair stood in the centre of the little room facing the fire. Stevie stepped around it and stood with his back towards the warmth. The whole room was settled in an orange-yellow glow. Behind the chair was the front door. Beside the door, a very small window. Beneath the window, a little table. And on the table was the candle. Stevie had jumped right past it in his excitement. It was a simple bit of wax and wick, about as round as a pound coin and no more than 6 inches tall. It spluttered as Stevie examined it, then settled back to a little flame. Do you still want to see me, Stevie? Yes. Can I now? You promised me not to be surprised. Why would I be surprised? Stevie stepped towards the candle. You know who I am. No, I don't. The little flame comforted him. Yes, you do, Stevie. You've known all along. Stevie stood beside the little table, looking at the light. You won't hurt me, will you? I would never hurt you, Stevie. It would be like hurting myself, wouldn't it? Yes. Slowly, Stevie reached for the candle, the fluttering flame peeling away his doubts. Turn around, Stevie. I'm over here. Stevie raised the candle to his eyes. He looked through the flame. The golden fire fanned across his vision. Everything was bathed in soft light. Stevie slowly turned towards the fireplace. He saw the chair through the flame, the little blanket across its lap. The room was as it was, only brighter. He faced the fireplace and stared into the flames. Can you see me, Stevie? Yes. And the ghostly image of a face appeared in the hearth. Keep looking, Stevie. He could not have stopped if he'd wanted to. The face took on definition. The look took on expression. A smile and shoulders plucked itself out from the fire. A body took its step from the flames. Stevie stood staring at himself. Through the candle. Who are you? The creature smiled at Stevie. You, of course. Why are you here? It studied its hands, flexing the fingers, twisting its wrist. Because you wanted to see me, remember? Stevie began to realise that he was more frightened than he had ever been before. He faced himself, was talking to himself, and he didn't like it. I want to go home now. So do I, Stevie. The creature stepped towards Stevie, reaching a hand for the candle. No, stay away from me. The imp looked hurt and drooped its head. You don't like me any more. Go away. No longer holding the candle to his eyes, Stevie saw that the creature was no apparition. It had shape, colouring, life. I want you to go back from where you came from. You made me, Stevie. You've only got yourself to blame. I'm just the best part. I don't want you anymore. Sorry, Stevie. Finders keepers, losers weepers. You found the candle. I get to keep you. You're evil. You're not me. You're ugly and everything I hate. You see, you understand more than you think. Go away. Leave me alone. No, Stevie. I have a right to survive. You called me when she left. Remember? You were lonely. You wanted something spectacular to happen. Remember? How much more spectacular can you get? You created me with every story you told. You brought me closer with every person you hurt. I am the best part of you, Stevie. I am the loneliness. I am the anger. I am the pain. Look at what's left. Fear. Stevie was stumbling backwards, the creature moving on the melody of its words. No, you can't come with me. You've got to stay here, and I'm never coming back. You'll stay here by yourself. Now, Stevie, is that fair? I give you everything you ask for, and you're ready to banish me to this. That's not right. The creature slowly circled Stevie. It spoke softly, without bitterness or accusation. Stevie became all the more desperate. I've got an idea. Why don't you stay here? Why don't you try it? Just for a little while, and then see what you think. No! Stevie threw the candle and watched as it uselessly fell through the creature. I didn't mean to call you. I was scared. I was alone. She left me. She left me all alone in that house. She showed me all these new things, and then she left. That was terrible of her, wasn't it? Go away. Terrified, Stevie pressed into the corner of the room. He scratched at the wood, scraping his heels to flatten him deeper into the frame of the shack. I didn't mean to call you. It was wrong. I just didn't want to be ordinary again. I didn't want to forget what had happened. The indulgent smile slipped from the creature's lips. It snapped its head to the side, listening. I don't want you to come with me anymore. I want you to stay here. I want you to leave me alone. The creature ignored Stevie and began growling like a threatened beast. It twisted to see behind itself and snarled at the air. Stevie looked about him. He could suddenly feel the heat dropping from the room, the light dying in the fireplace. In the dwindling glow, the creature fixed its glare on Stevie and thrust a hand at him. Take it. Take it now, little boy. Take my hand, or I will stay in your nightmares and eat your dreams. Take my hand. Stevie could feel cold coming from it, pouring out to grab him, to snatch him. No, I won't. He stood in the corner, watching as the thing began to inch towards him. It doesn't matter if you offer it or not. I will take your hand. Yes, Stevie, I will take your hand and take you home. Stevie watched as the creature advanced. He could not escape. He saw the fire spitting as it extinguished, saw the creature cloak to shadow, felt the cold at his face, and closed his eyes to scream. But the howl that rang in Stevie's ears was not his own. Stevie opened his eyes to find the thing snapping wildly at the dark around him. It leapt up onto the chair and stood on the cushion, howling and growling furiously about him. Stevie stepped away from the corner as a faint light seeped into the room. A mist poured down the chimney, a rich and pale purple mist. It cascaded into the room, sweeping over the debris in the fireplace, curling upon itself as it thickened on the floor. An odour whispered to Stevie, a faint scent of something. Lavender. "Grandma! I'm here, Grandma! Grandma, save me!" Stevie watched as the mist thickened to fog. It churned beneath the creature, folding on itself, and groped to touch the thing. "He's on the chair! He's on the chair, Grandma!" The fog descended into a storm. The maelstrom reared up over the snapping creature and slammed it down into the cushion on the chair. Stevie could hear the choked howl cut dead. The cloud boiled upon the chair and then slowly slid back to the floor. Stevie moved from the corner. The chair was empty, the fog thinning to mist as it slipped back to the fireplace. Stevie watched as the last of the smoke escaped up the chimney. He stood in darkness and silence. He turned around in biting disbelief. He was alone. A pale remnant of mist spilled down the chimney. It was no more potent than steam from a cooling teacup. He watched it melt before it could touch the floor. Sadly, Stevie fell back into the chair. He realised that the knot in his stomach had disappeared. It had been replaced by a bitter, soft feeling of sorrow. Stevie knew he had no one to blame but himself. He had been warned not to go to the quarry, not to go into the shack. But he had let a terrible sense of pride overcome his responsibility. He'd been wrong to blame his mother, wrong to handle his brother as he had, wrong to wish that his family disappear for ignoring him. He was powerful, yes, but he was unwise. He was where he belonged, stuck in this tiny box of a prison, punished for his pettiness. His grandmother had shown him a world that was not a toy. She had entrusted secrets, and he had promised to behave. She had been wrong to trust him. She had been right to call him a little boy. The ache in his shoulders returned as a dull throbbing. Stevie curled deeper into the chair and let the tears fall. After a few minutes, he fell asleep. Stevie dreamt that his grandmother came to take him home. He dreamt that the little door to the shack opened, and there she stood. She looked like an angel to him, an old and wrinkled spirit of many memories. He dreamt that she stood in front of him and bent down to take him in her arms. Her stiff, dry fingers raking through his hair, her brittle bones tight about him. She let him cry into her rough white hair and kept whispering to him that he was safe. Awkwardly, she raised him from his chair and led him towards the door of the shack. "We're going to get you home now, little one. You've had a hard day." And there, in the crack between her sadness and understanding, was a warm smile that melted the cruelness in the quarry and carried him home to his bed. Where she always watched over him.